Have you ever seen a UFO? Bigfoot or some ghosts? On Tactiles, there's Susie. She is the host. We really like to hear from you. You can tell us then all about the aliens. And if you're one of them, we really need to know. We really need to know. Really need to know, or we will come and get you in the night.
Hi, welcome to Out of This World with Susan and Willy. I'm Susan Spooler, your host, and today our special guest is MUFON's Executive Director, Jan Harzan. MUFON stands for the Mutual UFO Network. Jan, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Susan. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. We just had some tornado warnings here in Westford, so we are thankful that we still have maintained our power here at the TV station. And Jan is in beautiful Southern California, where they don't have any rain. So.
No rain. We do have fires, and we do have
nice.
earthquakes.
Ah, nice. Fire and brimstone. Lovely. So Jan, tell us about the history of MUFON. It started in 1969.
Okay. Exactly. Well, as you may be aware, Walt Andrus and several other gentlemen, including John Schuessler, were part of APRO back in those days, and they decided that they wanted to have more of a decentralized approach to the whole UFO issue. Mm-hmm. And so they created an organization called MUFON, and it was generally, at that time, was known as the Midwest UFO Network. Oh. And it was a group of states, Illinois included, that had come together with some investigators to look into this whole UFO issue. And it became so popular that other states and other countries asked if they could join it. So they had to change the name to the Mutual UFO Network from the Midwest UFO Network. And it's been going ever since, very strong.
That's very exciting. So it is an international organization.
Yes, we actually operate in over 40 countries today, including the United States.
Actually, you're in. Actually,
it's a foreign country, right?
Actually, it is. Actually, you're an intergalactic organization. So, if we looked at it from that perspective, so back then it was. Where was it? So was it started in the Midwest in any particular town or city? Because your headquarters now is in Huntington Beach, as I understand.
Well, we have our local chapter for Southern California, MUFON Orange County, which I had been in charge of before becoming the executive director. That's headquartered out of Huntington Beach. We're actually in Newport Beach, just down the street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific. So you hold monthly meetings, or what do you have for events there?
Sure. For the local group, and again, this is MUFON Orange County, they have monthly meetings on the third Wednesday of the month. They team up with MUFON Los Angeles to share speakers. MUFON LA typically does their meetings on the third Tuesday of the month to go back and forth. So they've just restarted very recently.
Very nice. And you have a conference coming up in September, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. We have an annual conference called the MUFON Symposium. Our 2015 MUFON Symposium will be at the Hotel Irvine here in Southern California, just a few miles from where our location is, where I'm filming from right now.
Very nice. So if people want to look that up, they could go to MUFON.com. Is it, or
go to MUFON.com and you can click on the little icon on the right, or you can go to MUFONSymposium.com and go directly to the website. Yeah, I'd encourage you to do that. Paul Hellyer, who is the former defense minister for Canada, is going to be our keynote speaker on Friday night, September 25th.
Very nice.
So the conference will run Friday through Sunday, the 25th through the 27th. We've got 11 great speakers and a number of guests that will be coming, including astronaut Blaine Hammond from the shuttle. We also have a couple of our key witnesses that we're planning to have there as well from the Hangar 1 TV show.
Nice. Oh, that's fantastic. So if people want to go to a local MUFON meeting, Mutual UFO Network meeting, they would just go to the website, and then there's a map of the United States? And then
yes, there is. Yeah, we have. If you go to our website, MUFON.com, and you click on Get Involved, one of the drop-down menus is Find a Chapter, and if you click on that, it'll give you a picture of the United States with all the countries listed below that, and you can click on that, and it'll tell you who is the state director or national director and how to get in touch with them.
Oh, terrific! I've been trying to visit the various chapters around New England, and most recently I've been down to Connecticut with director Mike Panicello, and so he was indicating that you hadn't quite put his MUFON raise into his banking account as of this morning, so he was rather upset about that. So,
as you know, we're an all-volunteer organization.
Yes,
Yeah, one of the things that the local chapters can do is fundraising, as well as putting on events where they charge admission so that they can actually create a treasury.
Okay.
And we're encouraging them to do that because in any organization, even if it's volunteer, you still need funding to put things
Sure.
on and make things happen.
Absolutely. Well, what happens, I understand with different organizations, if they have them at public libraries, the libraries don't allow you to charge. And that's where a lot of their events have been held lately. But I know that if they branched out to, say, like a Unitarian church or something, that they would probably have to pay. So that would
Right.
Help them.
Well, sometimes you can get around the charge part for the libraries by putting a basket on, just asking for donations.
Oh.
Of course, then of course you get kind of what you get, but
Right.
but people are generally very generous about
They are.
knowing that it costs money to rent rooms and it costs
This is true.
money to bring in speakers and it costs money to do a lot of things. It's not all free.
No, it's not, unfortunately. So tell us about Hangar One. When did that start coming on the air? When was it first produced?
Well, actually, it was a 5-year project in the making. My predecessor's predecessor, Clifford Clift, had actually brought that to the board about 5 years ago and said, I have all these executives, producers chasing me, wanting to do a show with MUFON, and I really don't know who I should go with. And so we said, well, why don't you ask them what they're willing to ante up. 4 of them out of the 5 quickly left when there was money involved. And Paul Villadola was the only man standing, and for $1,000 he bought the rights to the show, which is pretty darn cheap.
That is. Sure, I was going to say that's short money. So okay.
Yeah.
So
And so Paul started working with us. It took another 2.5, almost 3 years for him to get the show put together and to get a network interested in buying it. A production company, Go Lucky, out here in Marina Del Rey, was the company that he went with to help produce the show. It's a 3-step process in doing. I've gotten a PhD in television, so it's a 3-step process. You've got the producers who go create the idea for the show, and they sell it to a network or a production company that then goes and sells it to the network, and then they come back to you for the content. So we provide the content, the production company creates the show and puts it all together, and then they sell it to the network, and the network then has final say-so because they're the ones paying all the money for the production.
Right.
And so it's been kind of a real experience learning about television and how it all works. But I can tell you this. It's reaching over 1.5 million people, viewers today, households.
That's great.
It's given us quite a boost in our membership, and we're finding it to be just a great way to reach out to the general public and let them know that this subject is not only real, but it's happening right now around them.
That's exactly right. So tell us, what are some of the more interesting stories that you've encountered being a director of MUFON, or what some of your directors or investigators have reported back to you?
Well, it's interesting being in this job because I get emails all the time from the public and from interesting people who want to tell their story. Sometimes they're afraid to put something on the internet in terms of reporting it through the internet, but they would like to talk to someone about it. And I got a call about a year ago from a retired TWA pilot who related actually 3 different stories to me about 2 UFO encounters he personally had as captain of a TWA airline. And the third was a story that he was told as a young man by a friend of his uncle's who he was out camping with. I'll start with one of the stories first, if you'd like.
Sure.
He was out flying from St. Louis. This is back when TWA was still TWA.
I was going to say, it's when it was still in business. Yes.
And he was flying from St. Louis to San Francisco. The flight was delayed about an hour. It was supposed to leave around 11 o'clock in the evening, if I remember correctly, but it didn't get off till well after midnight. Oh. And as he was flying east to west, it was pitch black outside down below, and he looked, 2 things. One is he looked down and saw a 3-dimensional landing light system open up on the floor below him. Now, he mentioned it was 3-dimensional. Most ILS systems, instrument landing systems, are just a series of blank lights, letting you know whether you're too high or too low to come in for a landing. But this was literally in the middle of nowhere, and it just blinked on in a flash, three-dimensional. He said it was like two crosshairs, one purple, I think one pink or something of that nature, if I remember correctly. And the next thing he and his co-pilot noticed was up in the corner of their windshield, there were these little white things fluttering around like little fireflies. He said about 20 to 25 of them just flittering around. And then all of a sudden they went zip, 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 like they're just one after the other, boom, 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 till they're all down on the ground.
Oh my
and then this ILS just shut off, went blank.
Wow.
And he said, Jan, he said, we were over Area 51 when this happened.
Oh boy.
So,
wow.
I mean, here's a guy who was flying his plane. He wasn't expecting this. This just happened. I know you probably can't fly exactly over Area 51, but he was off to the side and saw this all happen. And his co-pilot, and he looked at each other, and he said to his co-pilot, he said, did you see that? He says, no, I didn't. He said, I didn't either. So they didn't talk about it for 25 years, I think it was, until he retired and saw our show on television and decided he should call MUFON and let us know about it.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that I've read about President Eisenhower that have to do with your story, as
Right.
I'm sure you can elaborate on as well.
Yes. Well, President Eisenhower, was one of the first presidents that we know of to have actually met with extraterrestrials, according to the stories that we've got. Of course, no one can prove that, but I suppose that somewhere there's documentation that what he actually met with. And of course, he was the one president who, when he left office, made a comment looking right into the camera to the American people, saying, beware of the military-industrial complex. And I think he knew that they were taking this technology that had been given to us, and they were going off to put it for their own purposes.
Right.
I think, and I think many on our board think, that it's time for this technology to put use for the benefit of mankind.
Right.
You know, why shouldn't we be using it here on this planet to help everyone, not just the military?
Exactly. That's right. How beneficial it can be to
Yes.
the world at large. So, so tell us, do you have any other interesting stories regarding any sightings or people's transformational experiences, or?
Well, I can tell you about it. I just got invited to an investigation here this past weekend in New Mexico. I don't typically go out on investigations. That's not my role to be an FI or anything like that.
Right.
But another individual, I guess I can mention her name on the air, it's Paula Harris, had said, hey, I'd like you to come out and meet with one of my witnesses on a case I'm working on. It was Jose Padilla, and Jose was a rancher. At the time, he was a 9-year-old kid. There seems to be something about being 9 years old that these things happen to you. But he was a 9-year-old kid, and his father had asked he and his friend, Remy Baca, who was 7 at the time, to go out and find a cow that was lost on their ranch. And so they went off riding their horses, doing two things. One, looking for this cow, and two, checking the fence line to make sure there were no breaks in it where the cows could get out.
That's right, yeah.
And all of a sudden, a lightning storm came up, which happens on the prairie there or in the hills of New Mexico. And they took cover under a rock. And after it had passed, they saw an object come flying out of the sky and go behind a hillside. And all of a sudden, smoke came up, or they saw commotion. So they rode their horses over to see what was going on. And they were about 500 feet from this object. It was around 30 feet, I believe, by 50 feet. It was an oval-shaped object with a hole in the side of it. And he says that there were little beings running back and forth with making little squeals, like they sounded like sounded like a jackrabbit that had been shot by a gun, running back and forth. His friend Remy got scared, and so they ended up leaving. They went home, told their father about this, and he called the sheriff. And 2 days later, they went back. Now, this happened, I think, August 16th or so, 1945, if I got the date right. 2 days later, they went back on the 18th. And the craft was still there, but the beings were gone. And I believe the sheriff at that time then communicated with the military, who came and basically told his father that they had lost a weather balloon, and it was down on his ranch, and they needed to recover it. Now, this was a 30-foot by 50-foot solid object, weather balloon.
Sure.
And they came and spent the next 2 weeks trying to get it out of there. They literally had to build a road in so they could get the tractor trailer in, and they had to put in a whole new gate for him because the gate he had was too narrow for the truck.
So they had to tear it apart. Wow.
This was one big weather balloon.
Yes, I'm sure it was. And so then, did he ever find any debris that he kept?
Well,
Or
actually, as a matter of fact, he did. I mean, when the soldiers had done, they had come back and watched the soldiers package this thing and try to get it out of where it was stuck. And they loaded it onto the truck. It took about 2 weeks to get this whole thing done, between building the road, getting the truck in there, getting the fence fixed, getting it on the truck, and then they put a tarp over it and kind of cinched it down. And then they went into town for dinner. The two boys snuck in underneath the tarp and went inside of the ship. And I believe it was Jose who took like an angle iron and actually broke a piece off of the craft. So we're in the process of having it tested. I don't know if it'll turn out to be anything extraordinary. For all I know, it might have been an experimental craft that they were building out of White Sands, because if you remember at the time, Oppenheimer and Teller and all the guys were out there working on the atomic bomb, and they were the advanced scientists of the day. Plus, we had taken all of the German scientists out there that we had captured or taken after World War II. So we'll have to see what comes of it.
That's fascinating. I'll be interested to see if any particular alloys that are, similar to titanium, any lightweight metals, platinum, the more durable.
Right. We know it was from 1945, and we know what the technology for metals was back in 45, which is much different today. So we'll have to see. Does it match up?
Oh boy! So when will you have the your data? When will you receive
We're gonna have to send it to the test. I just happened last weekend, so we're just gonna get it off to the testing lab, and then they'll write us a report.
So we may know by the time you come out here in October what that compound is, what that metal is made out of. Well, that'll be really fascinating. That'll be fascinating. I'm excited to hear that. The engineer in me and the scientist in me, of course.
Exactly.
So yes. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. So you've been involved. You've been involved with MUFON for, you said, 25 years.
About 25 years. Yeah, I found out about MUFON. It was interesting. I was a branch manager for IBM at the time, and I had a guy who I was using as a business coach because I was very young.
Yeah.
And he asked me one day. He said, if you could do anything in the world, if you had all the money in the world, you could do anything you wanted, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd probably do UFO research. And he said, oh, really? He said, why is that? So I told him about my own personal sighting that I'd had, and he said, okay. And so I thought that was an interesting question to ask. Well, I went in about a month later, and as we wrapped up our session, he turned to me and said, oh, by the way, I found this, and he handed me a flyer for a UFO conference. It was called, I believe it was called UFO Expo West.
Okay.
And it was out at the LAX Hilton, just up the street from where I live.
Oh my God.
And so I had no idea that people even talked about this stuff. I mean, I didn't have any knowledge of UFOs or UFO conventions or anything about that. So I went to the conference, and it was actually at that conference that I met another gentleman by the name of Tom Keller, who had, interestingly enough, graduated 10 years ahead of me from the UCLA School of Engineering. So we were both UCLA graduates, engineering students, and working in technologically related jobs. I was in sales with IBM. He was actually working for aerospace companies at the time as a contractor. And yeah, it was a real eye opener for me. And while I was there, in the vendor area, there was a table for MUFON, and I got their materials, and I said, oh, there's meetings for MUFON. It was MUFON LA at the time.
Okay.
And I started attending their meetings up at the Pickwick Center in Burbank. And so that was what got me first started in this whole thing.
Wow. So tell us about your own personal sighting. I'd love to hear that.
Well, it's interesting because, I was a kid about 8 years old at the time, and my father had, I remember the newspapers coming, and it was always having something in there about flying saucers, and, in those days, that was front page news. Today, you can't even find it on page 38 in the journal. They won't even publish anything, hardly, unless it's something they can make fun of, which is sad. But that's something we need to change. We're working on changing that. So my father got this magazine called Argosy and True. They were the two men's magazines of the day. And I believe it was in the Argosy issue back in the early 60s. There was an article about Donald Kehoe and Nightcap. And I was impressed as a little kid because I was reading this article, and he was a Marine major, I think a major in the Marines, if I'm not mistaken. I might have my facts wrong here. But it just impressed me that here was someone from the military talking about the fact that these UFOs were real, that they're coming from out there, while the general government was just talking, and military and other people were just talking about, oh, we don't know what these are. Doesn't seem to be anything to be concerned about. Oh, it looked like that was the planet Venus. It looked like that was a balloon. And yes, I mean, I would tell you from my own, years in this, that there are a lot of people who mistake Venus for a UFO, who mistake balloons for UFOs, who mistake now drones for UFOs or Chinese lanterns. But the fact is, underneath all of that, in about 5 to 10% of the cases, there's enough unusual aspects to it that it's not something terrestrial or even a phenomenon of nature. It really is some type of technological device that's being operated. So anyway, my brother and I read these articles. We were talking about it. He's a year under me, so he was 9 at the time. And we decided we were going to build, because this was a year or two later, we decided we were going to build a UFO. We decided they must work on some kind of electromagnetic engine.
I love it.
And so we designed a 3-engine pulsed electromagnetic flying saucer. And we said, well, we're going to build this thing and put it in our backyard. So we drew up the plans. I mean, we're just little kids at the time. I'm sure how we would have done it.
I love this. This is great.
But we were at the store with our mother, a month later, and on the magazine rack was a half-size magazine. It's like, instead of an 8x10 sheet of paper, it was like half size.
Oh, kind of like Fate magazine is that size.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
like Fate magazine, and it was called, I think, Flying Saucer Review, I think was the name of it. We bought a copy of it. I think it was $1. So we bought $1. We bought a copy of it, and we took it home, and we were reading it in my brother's bedroom, and it said, these flying saucers are seen around military installations, nuclear power plants, and places where anti-gravity research is being done. So we looked at each other and we said, well, we're doing anti-gravity research. Maybe one will come visit us. Literally, within about a month, my brother comes into my bedroom at 6:30 on a Saturday morning. It was in early April, I believe, in 1965. And he wakes me up and he says, there's somebody trying to break into my bedroom. I said, what do you mean they're trying to break into your bedroom? He says, well, they're playing with the screen outside. I said, well, did you look out to see what it was? He said, no, I didn't look out to see what it was. So I said, well, let's go back, take a look. So I was out in the garage, and my father turned that into a bunk room, and he was in the very back of the house. So I had to walk all the way in the house to look out his window, and we didn't see anything. I mean, well, we didn't look out the window. We looked in from his doorway. We looked at the window. There was nothing there, nothing happening. So I said, well, let's go out in the backyard and take a look. So we walked down the hallway and out into the family room and into the garage. Now, halfway down the hallway, I was looking back at him talking, and he said, look. And I spun around to look where he was looking, which was a wall of windows we had, and it was backlit by the sunlight coming in.
Yeah.
The white drapes there. I didn't see anything. So he said to me, I said, what'd you see, Jeff? And he said, well, there was somebody standing, silhouetted against the window. And when I told you to look, they floated backwards. And he used that word, floated backwards.
Wow.
So I thought to myself, I'm thinking to myself, he's just kidding me. He's just pulling my leg. He's trying to pull one over on me. So I said, well, let's go out in the backyard. So as we walked through the family room and past the kitchen into the garage, I noticed the clock on the wall said 6:30 a.m. It wasn't a digital clock, so it was the hands on the clock. But went out into the garage, out into the backyard, to the end of the house, and looked back towards his window. We didn't see anything. So I'm thinking, okay, this is he's just pulling one over on me. So I said, well, there's nothing here, Jeff. Let's go back in. So we turned around and go back in the house, and literally there 30 feet from us, 10 feet off the ground, was a craft hovering with 4 landing gear on it, making nothing but a humming noise. If you've ever been outside at night and you've heard a high a telephone, the transformers on top of the telephone pole, sometimes they hum.
Yes.
It was that kind of a humming noise. Okay. And I was just dumbfounded. I'm like, oh my gosh. First thought that went through my mind was these things are real, because I'm staring at it right in front of me.
Right.
Second thought that went through my mind was, oh my gosh, this thing looks like it's man-made. Now, why did I think it looked man-made? It looked to me man-made because it was a kind of a oval-shaped craft with these landing gear on it, and then between the landing gear on each side there was these crossbars making an X, and in the middle of the X was a bolt right here. And so this thing would like scissor as the landing gear went up and down as it landed to kind of cushion it. But as I looked at it closer, I noticed that the craft itself was completely smooth. There wasn't a seam or a rivet in the entire thing. It was like blown glass. It was just perfectly smooth. It was bright orange, very ornate, very bright orange, and the landing gear were corrugated like blue. I would call it cobalt blue, deep blue, kind of and then black suction cups on the bottom, and then brown crossbars. So it was a very ornately painted thing. I'm not sure why it was so ornate, but I said to my brother, I'm going to go in the house and get a camera, stay here and watch it. So I ran into the garage, went to go into the house, and we had locked ourselves out. So I start pounding on the door as hard as I can.
Yeah.
About 2 minutes later, my older brother came to the door. Now, he'd been asleep up until that time because we went out at 6:30 in the morning. And opened the door. I ran in past him, got the camera, ran back out. My brother was standing on the swing set looking out to the west, and I said to him, where'd it go? And he said, well, it just hung there for a minute, and it slowly started drifting to the west and then shot out of sight, just shot out of sight over the hill. So that's all I can tell you. I mean, it was a very short sighting, probably lasted 2-3 minutes from my perspective. He was out there a little bit longer, obviously, watching it. But it certainly opened my eyes that at least this technology is here. I can't tell you if there was somebody in the craft or what they were doing, but it appears that would be so based on my brother's observations. So, I mean, it just started me on a search for how do these things work? Like, how do we back engineer this stuff? How do we put it to use on our planet? And that's what actually got me to go to UCLA engineering school, was to go figure out how to
reverse engineer them. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, did anyone else in your neighborhood or town view that sighting or see it?
Not that I'm aware. I mean, it's possible, but not that I'm aware of. I mean, I have not found any other reports from. It was in Thousand Oaks, California, which is in Southern California, about 80 miles from where I'm sitting right now.
Okay.
Where it happened, but I did talk many years later to the director of investigations for MUFON at the time, who was just starting the first putting files into the computer about the sighting reports, and he pulled up a case, I believe it was in Minneapolis, where a similar craft had landed on the apex of a house. So there's landing gear on each side, and little beings were seen coming in and out of the craft.
So Jan, I would like to thank you again for joining us here and talking about your UFO experiences. You're going to be coming out here to Massachusetts to speak at our Greater New England UFO Conference. We look forward to seeing you and hearing the rest of your presentations. And I want to thank you again, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Susan. I'm looking forward to being there.
Thank you so much. Again, this is Susan Spooler with Out of This World with Susan and Willy. Our website for the conference is newenglandufo.com. That's www.newenglandufo.com. Our event is on Saturday, October 17th, 2015, in Leominster, Massachusetts, at City Hall. We look forward to seeing you. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.
All right, thanks.
Have you ever seen